In 3 centuries of Spanish rule, only a few thousand Mexican settlers had migrated to Texas, despite its rich natural resources and agricultural potential. A number of problems scared off potential Mexican settlers. One was increasing friction between Native American and Mexican inhabitants in the area. These two groups have been in close contact since the earliest Spanish settlements. Spain instituted a system of Roman Catholic missions in California, New Mexico, and Texas in an effort to convert Native Americans to Catholicism and settle them on mission lands. Each mission was usually protected by a presidio or fort. The mission system declined in the 1820s and 30s after Mexico won its independence from Spain. Officials of the Mexican government took over many of these missions. Native Americans were forced to work at the missions as unpaid laborers. Groups of hostile Comanche and Apache retaliated by sweeping through Texas, terrorizing both the Mexican settlers of the northern province and other settlers there known as Tejanos. After winning its independence from Spain, trade opportunities between Mexico's northern provinces and the United States multiplied. Newly free, Mexico sought to improve its economy. It eased trade restrictions and made trade with the U.S. more attractive than trade between northern Mexico and other sections of Mexico. This loosened ties between Mexico and its northern provinces, present-day New Mexico, California, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Mexico's northern provinces were difficult to govern. They lay far from the seat of the Mexican government, and Mexico City seemed indifferent to the problems in these northern provinces, primarily Indian raids. The Mexican government began looking for ways to strengthen ties between Mexico City and the northern provinces. To prevent border violations and to protect the territory from Native American attacks, the Mexican government encouraged American farmers to settle in Texas. In 1821, 1823, and 1824, the Mexican government offered huge land grants to agents called impresarios. The impresarios, in turn, attracted American settlers who eagerly bought cheap land in return for a pledge to obey Mexican laws and to observe the official religion of Roman Catholicism. The population of English-speaking settlers soon passed the number of Tejanos in Texas. Until the 1830s, these Anglo settlers lived as naturalized Mexican citizens. The most successful impresario was Stephen F. Austin. By 1825, Austin had issued 297 land grants to the group that would become famously known as Texas's Old 300, the oldest settled families in Texas. Word about Texas spread, and across the southern and northwestern United States, people were encouraged to move. They would nail a sign to their door that said GTT, Gone to Texas. Americans increasingly discussed extending the U.S. border with Mexico to the Rio Grande, known in Mexico as the Rio Bravo. President John Quincy Adams had offered to buy Texas for $1 million. Andrew Jackson upped the offer to $5 million. Mexico not only refused to sell Texas, but also began to regret its initial hospitality to American immigrants. As the American population in Texas grew, so did tensions over cultural differences as well as slavery. The settlers spoke English rather than Spanish. Many were southern cotton or sugar farmers who brought their slaves with them. Mexico abolished slavery in 1824 and insisted in vain that the Texans free their slaves as well. In 1830, Mexico sealed its borders and levied a heavy tax on the importation of American goods, but it lacked sufficient force to enforce the law or police its borders. The American population doubled between 1830 and 1834, and by 1835, more than 1,000 Americans a month were streaming into Texas. GTT, Gone to Texas, was scrawled on more and more doors in the United States. In 1836, the population of Texas included 4,000 Tejanos, 30,000 Native Americans, 30,000 Anglos, and 5,000 African Americans. Attempts to win greater self-government for Texas failed when Mexican President Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, suspended the 1824 Mexican Constitution. Stephen Austin was imprisoned at that time for inciting revolution. Santa Anna then revoked local powers in Texas, prompting several rebellions to erupt, including what would eventually be known as the Texas Revolution. Determined to force Texas to obey his laws, Santa Anna marched toward San Antonio with an army of 4,000 men. At the same time, Austin and his followers issued a call for Texans to arm themselves for battle. Santa Anna's troops were veterans who had only recently returned from putting down similar rebellions in Mexico's southern provinces. These were hardened soldiers. The Texans struck the first blow of the struggle in late 1835. Mexican forces were driven from an old Spanish mission and presidio near San Antonio called the Alamo. February 23, 1836, in retaliation, Santa Anna surrounds and lays siege to the Alamo. The siege would last for 12 days. On March 2, 1836, Texas declared its independence from Mexico. On March 6, 1836, Santa Anna's troops, having laid siege to the Alamo, finally stormed the old fort and destroyed the small American garrison. Among those trying to defend the old Spanish mission were such notable figures as James Travis, Jim Bowie, and Davy Crockett. The tiny American garrison had held out for 12 days, from February 23rd to March 6th. All 187 defenders of the Alamo were killed. Only a few women and children were spared. Hundreds of Santa Anna's men also perished in the battle. On March 20th, 1836, Santa Anna's army captured 445 Americans near the small town of Goliad. All 445 were executed. The victories at the Alamo and at Goliad would prove costly for Santa Anna. April 21st, 1836, 6 weeks after the Alamo, Texans struck back. Led by General Sam Houston, they defeated Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto. Shouting, "Remember the Alamo," Texans killed 630 of Santa Anna's men in 15 minutes and captured Santa Anna himself. After signing the Treaty of Velasco, Santa Anna was released and he granted independence to Texas. September 1836, Sam Houston, the hero of the Battle of San Jacinto, is elected president of the Republic of Texas, and the new Lone Star Republic sets up an army and a navy. Just 2 years later, Sam Houston in 1838 would invite the United States to annex or incorporate the Republic of Texas into the United States. Most Texans hoped this would happen, but U.S. sentiment was once again divided along sectional lines over the issue of slavery. Then in 1844, the presidential election featured a debate on westward expansion. James K. Polk won the election and firmly favored the annexation of Texas at the earliest practicable period. On December 29, 1845, Texas became the 28th state of the Union. The furious Mexican government recalled its ambassador from Washington, and events then moved quickly towards war.